questions. Join us for part 2 at an in-depth session designed for clinical engineering. So this is the part 2 already. And our speakers need no introduction. We know Mark Gillingham and Jason Stock will be presenting today. I would also like to thank all of you for participating and thank you. Go ahead, Mark Gillingham and Jason.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to, I'm going to share my screen first just to make sure everyone can see. Can you see it, Maria?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, good. Hi, everyone. Thanks. As Maria said, this is actually probably the third part of a presentation series that we've now done, 2 official webinars with the CMBES, and we also did, if you were at the CMBEC in Fredericton, we had a lot of great conversations, and we also presented on the future of 3D printing in healthcare as part of that group. But today, we're going to talk a little bit about a more practical side of implementation, what you would need to do and learn to specifically implement 3D printing inside your own organization. And, we figured it was great to kind of just take a step back and talk a little bit about what we've heard from you and what we've learned over the last little while. And, I think across the board, what we're seeing is that 3DP or 3D printing adoption is growing and at a pretty phenomenal rate. Healthcare organizations across Canada are already using 3D printing. What we are finding as well, though, is that it's siloed inside of specific departments or with specific users, and typically not organization-wide. So not everyone has kind of democratized access to all the benefits and and technologies that are available in specific spots inside the organization. And then we're also seeing, and specifically with clinical engineering, just understanding and biomedical engineering, the risk management side. So there is also a lack of standardization that we're seeing with regard to processes and ensuring how you would scale and manage overall risk in deploying a 3D print solution inside your organization. So again, I think why everyone may be here today is to kind of learn a little bit about why 3D printing is advancing, how to make it accessible. You probably have supply chain and procurement challenges that you're experiencing as part of the day-to-day operations. We just saw a fantastic video from TOH, but with all those different types of pieces of equipment and all the challenges they have in keeping those items operational, they don't always have the correct parts and things that they need. Additionally, we are seeing a healthcare the frontline healthcare group that are very innovative, and lots of times it's not just a small, medium, and large that you need, but maybe you have an idea for a product innovation or a customization to something existing that would help you do your job better. And then how do we take all these technologies, again, as we said, and manage risk? And then if we do a good job in doing all those things at the end, hopefully we're going to have a great opportunity for some Q&A and an open discussion. And the chat window is also open here, and there's also an opportunity to actually post questions directly in the platform here as we're going along. So please do so. Jason and others from the PolyUnity team are monitoring those items, and we'll be able to address some of those either in chat or when we get to the end. So why now? And what's driving 3D printing? The technology has been around for about 40 years, but ultimately what we're seeing is that there's been a huge uptick in just technical advancements in the last 5 to 7 years specifically, but it seems like every other day, every other week, every other month over the past year or two, that advancement is just starting to increase more exponentially. And what that has brought with it is an affordability factor. These aren't multi-$100,000 pieces of equipment now. They're much more achievable from an affordability perspective. They're much easier to use. And from that, we're seeing an increased adoption and a drive for decentralized innovation. And so what we mean by that is, you don't necessarily need to send your product idea out to a centralized manufacturing facility to get it made there. Lots of things now can be made, in-house or regionally. But the wrapper around all of that again is the requirement for standardization and a risk managed approach, so that we're using this technology effectively and properly. And so, just as a very quick example, like, what are we talking about here? And it doesn't always need to be something that's overly complex. And what we've seen is the ability to go from an issue to a product design to an actual produced product has just absolutely collapsed from a time and cost perspective. And so, this is a standard cable probe that you may have inside your regular workday, over $600 to replace. But by just putting a simple protector that's made out of a flexible, TPU type material, all of a sudden you can avoid that cost and the labor of actually having to replace it, and the procurement costs associated with actually just going out and acquiring that product. And so this is just one simple example, and we'll get into others in a bit, of how this technology is helping clinical and biomedical engineering. So within the whole realm of 3D printing, though, it's not just a printer, it's not just software, it's not just materials. There is a gamut of things that kind of need to come together to be able to provide a proper 3D print production service. And, if we start in the bottom left corner, it starts really with the ability to create that digital design and utilizing a couple of different software tools to make that happen. We then need actual machines to do the production, what materials we're going to select, and then more and more, if you want to scale this across an organization, how do you make it accessible? What are the softwares? What are the automations you're using to be able to connect, to bring the connective tissue to link all of these things together? And so, we're really, again, even in the last 12, 18, 24 months, there's just been tremendous advancements in the computer-aided design software. Now, more and more, there are functional features inside the actual platform that support additive manufacturing or 3D printing, and the ability just to design products much, much faster, much more efficient, but still at a higher rate of quality. And these involve, like I said, CAD software, the slicer tools that actually would package the 3D print file for your printer, various types of tools and add-ons, and then there's automations that kind of go along with that. On the materials engineering side, we are literally seeing new materials weekly for sure, and it seems like daily. You're seeing improvements in consistency, strength, durability, flexibility, flow rate, and in many cases, the costs are either staying the same even with all these improvements, or in some cases they're coming down. What we've done inside of PolyUnity is we've selected, we have preferred vendors and preferred material types that we use, and we've calibrated those materials to our machines to make sure we have consistency of output, and that we're not just kind of pulling random materials off the off of Amazon or a marketplace. And what that gives us is a much better output at the end of the day, in using a standard set of materials for certain products. And again, the accessibility of biocompatible materials, things that are specifically built, plastics that are built for high wear, for movement, for motion type applications, engineered polymers that you can use for strength and temperature considerations. There's lots of materials that are flame retardant that you can get, and again, at pretty economical prices these days. Obviously, biological materials are not something that we might use on a regular basis, but food grade ones do certainly show up as well. I guess the takeaway is that there is a very broad range of materials. Tie all of this with improvements in the actual machines themselves, speed, quality, and the price economics, and the numbers of types of 3D printing that's available in the marketplace. There's a white box around the top corner. I think for most clinical engineering groups, these would be the kind of the top two types of, I guess, 3D print technologies that are probably most accessible and give you a really wide range, like the number of resins and the materials that are available through FDM or FFF technologies. It's a great place to start. And again, these technologies are very affordable these days. But there is a whole host of other types of 3D print technologies, depending on what you may need for specialized applications, for volume production, with advanced polymers and metals that you can also use inside your organizations. One of the other big challenges that we see for a lot of organizations who have, in many cases, they've got a series of products that they've designed, that they've hosted, but they're storing them on a Google Drive or a Microsoft SharePoint or something of that nature. And they're not always accessible in a means that is easy to use or convenient for proliferation across multiple user groups. And so the ability to have a proper digital inventory system, what this does is allows for scalability. You can access it for on-demand production, and ultimately then you can print at or near the site where you actually need the part, and you can share it across the organization. Certainly improve spare parts management, and also the ability, if depending on how you share the files, for others to actually interact with them, customize and iterate, to take an existing design and maybe change it or modify it to meet their specific use case, so they don't have to start from scratch every other single time. And then at the end of the day, we are operating in a highly regulated environment within the healthcare space. So the products need to follow quality management systems, best practices and policies, ensuring that groups like IPAC and procurement, and in many cases that there's a sign off from clinical engineering staff who are overseeing the product use, having proper reporting and audit trails. And in some cases, you need Health Canada certifications, such as an MDEL, medical device establishment license, if you're producing, class 1 or above medical products. So what PolyUnity is set out to do is really to provide, again, this democratized access to 3D printing services for all healthcare professionals. And today we're specifically speaking, to clinical and biomedical engineering. But ultimately, what we've seen is across the board, over 50 different departments, that 3D printing has value and is in use in pretty much every department in across all of our healthcare organizations, in places that you could or may not imagine. And it's only growing and increasing, as the materials get more advanced, as the price of the machines come down, the applicability of delivering personalized, customized healthcare, creating spare parts, developing new innovations, are all becoming much more accessible. And so what PolyUnity is building is a platform that ultimately brings all of those pieces together. And PolyUnity in and of itself is really, the word very literally is many operating as one, or many in unity. And so it's not only a single platform for many products and many solutions, but it's also a place where we're bringing together a Canadian ecosystem of innovators and people who want to use 3D print technology, and we're allowing them to also collaborate. And by bringing ideas forth, a problem solved in British Columbia becomes a solution in Newfoundland or Ontario, and across the board. So what does the platform entail? Ultimately, again, a host of 3D printable products and applications, everything from anatomical, patient-specific models, more and more wearables and assistive devices, but obviously lots of medical devices, replacement products, things of that nature, all connected to a series of services, starting with a digital inventory platform where you can access and order the products that you need. Also design services if you're not able to kind of design the products internally inside your own organization, and then manufacturing services. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. The manufacturing services, lots of times there's 3D printers inside of healthcare organizations. And what we've really worked with several healthcare organizations to do at this point is to make their 3D print hubs available and accessible to maybe just other locations within the same department or across multiple departments. And in doing so, we're building a network of distributed manufacturing that we're connecting Canadian healthcare organizations, from coast to coast to coast. And within the platform, risk management workflows, as we've talked about, to help ensure that the products we're designing and creating get the right oversight and are being able to be put safely into healthcare environments. That requires that you have, within the QMS services, that you have traceable audit trails. Also, that they're accessible from an order and financial billing perspective. And then there's, reporting. You can see what's been ordered by whom and where those products may be in use inside your organization. And here's some of the groups we're currently working with. We've done a lot of great work with Can Health and also with Obio in supporting the rollout of this technology with client projects, again, in many areas across the country. Quick drink of water. So the next step, we're going to just walk through and delve a little bit more deeply. So this is a part, for anyone who's followed our presentation, some of that material may have been kind of familiar to you, but we're table setting really. The next series of slides is where we're going to get specifically into some of the workflows required to actually utilize 3D print services inside your organization. And, ultimately these workflows are framed for best practices around 3 pillars that we talk about quite prominently. The first is liability. So, ensuring that you have a QMS, a quality management system that kind of oversees the whole process. PolyUnity's quality management system is based on the ISO 13485 standard. And we also hold an MDEL with Health Canada, and we integrate IPAC communication typically with the products that we're developing. And so what that gives you is a foundation to move forward in a scalable, standardized way, to have a process where you can intake products, you can prioritize how you may want to do them and fulfill them inside the organization. And this ultimately leads to sustainability. So a solution that is just, doesn't get spun up and is not managed or resourced properly. And ultimately where you can see and understand costs and usage and the value of the platform. So, what's a day in the life of an idea to a product that's available for order inside of a healthcare organization. And so in our world, it typically follows this type of a process. First of all, someone has an idea, they've created, they have a new innovation, or in some cases, maybe they want a digital twin of an existing product that they just can't source in the standard supply chain. And so you need to be able to capture that design request or that idea request, triage it, and understand, is this something that can actually be manufactured through additive manufacturing or 3D printing? Does it make sense from a cost perspective? Do we have the materials to support it? And so the ability to, in a standardized format, to take in that design request, assess it and triage it. Once you've said, okay, this is a product that we think makes sense, then you move forward to a modeling and design phase. And here's where you would look at, the prototyping and determining exactly how the product would be designed and how it would work. From there, you move on to making sure that you've got the right material selected for the product for that particular use case. And then once you've hit in that stage, really you've collected enough information that you should have a data set pulled together to get that product approved. And some cases, again, maybe it's internal approval process where you want to produce a prototype and show it to IPAC and make sure that it's okay from a sanitation sterilization perspective. Maybe you need internal procurement sign off. Any and all of those things can be done. And so by collecting the information through these first couple of stages, you end up with a product data set that can then be distributed to various stakeholders for sign off and approval, and those approvals can take place inside the platform. Ultimately, once you've received that approval, you have a product that you can host in a digital inventory solution, and then that's where you make it accessible. And then ultimately, you still need to allow people to actually access it, order it, and understand where that's going to get manufactured and how it gets delivered, who pays for it, all of those things. So, once the product is actually fully designed, you can repeat the order management process, obviously, but doing this in a very efficient manner so it doesn't take, many months or years to actually bring a product to life is really, really important. And that's why these digital workflows that we've worked on for several years now help to really streamline that whole process. So the four main workflows that you'll see present inside of PolyUnity's i3D.health software platform specifically target the design, request, and triage. So the ability to intake an idea, triage that, and move it forward through a workflow process that allows you to obtain regulatory approval, move it into a digital inventory, and then allow it to have order management within your organization. So we'll start off with the first one and double click on this a little bit. Any user inside the organization, and you don't need to even understand how 3D printing works, but you can open up the platform to allow, again, any user from any department to submit an idea that they may have for a product or an innovation that can help out the organization from a cost perspective, an operational efficiency, safety perspective. Once you've intaken that, what you'll find within the software is that you'll collect the information on how many of these products are required, what opportunity window, and what we mean by an opportunity window is that, is there a timeline at which you need to actually have this product produced? So is that 2 weeks? Is it 2 months? When do you require the product so that you don't miss that opportunity window to solve the problem? The product then can be accepted or rejected by approvers and stakeholders inside the organization. And you also have the ability to escalate that product based on the level of urgency or the requirement for the organization, or maybe just overall it could be due to a cost savings as well. Once you move this through, designers then have the ability to look at material, labor, production time on a specific machine, and develop a financial estimate of what that product would cost to create. And again, that can be signed off and approved upon. And also you can take that product and assign it to a specific designer to have that product created. So all of that workflow can be managed inside the platform. Through that whole process, you're collecting information about the actual product itself, and you're developing a profile. And over the last, I would say 5-6 years, this is a core part of what we've been working towards, is really working with lots of clinical engineering staff and healthcare practitioners across the board to build workflows and best practices around how to best develop a quality management system that can allow products to be very efficiently designed, created, manufactured, and delivered safely within the healthcare environment. And so some of those items involve looking at copyright and IP protection, again, ensuring that there's IPAC approval on the actual product, it's approved from a budget perspective internally, and then ultimately having a product that is set up for approval and use inside your specific organization. From an inventory perspective, PolyUnity has an inventory right now of 3D printable products that has about 600 products in that inventory. We also create new products for clients on a very regular basis, daily, weekly. We also are encountering clients who have their own inventories of products. And this is one of the new features that I would say is coming, that we're launching in conjunction with multiple healthcare organizations that we're working with at this point, is taking the inventory that you may have inside your organization, digitizing that, making it accessible to either just staff inside your own organization, or if you want, there's a commercialization path to actually take those products, bring them into PolyUnity's platform, and make them accessible to the Canadian marketplace. All the information, again, the item description, specifications, we have templates and formats for what you would need to build that product profile, control the design file permissions, who gets to see it, who gets to use it, can you just order it, can you actually access it and modify the design yourself, and then what does access look like through your organization. And then finally, here's where I would say the rubber hits the road. This is where the product is made available. And many times what we're seeing inside of the organizations we're dealing with is that you may have a 3D printer or multiple 3D printers inside your own clinical engineering department, but you're getting requests from outside groups. There's no way of actually intaking an order to be able to properly fill it. And so within the platform, what we build is an order approval process. You get a grid that shows you all the orders, the status, who's responsible for them, who's actually, what site is potentially doing the production, administrative control on some of those items to ensure that the right people, again, have that ability to kind of manage the process. And then notifications out to the users about when status changes. So the idea has been approved, it's gone to production, it's ready for shipment, so on and so forth. And then ultimately billing and financial reconciliation. So the other part that we've seen many, many times now is that, there's a printer inside of a specific department. At times you may want to, even if you own that printer, you may take in requests from other adjacent departments or other facilities, within a clinical engineering department, but ultimately it comes out of a different budget. So if you accept that request, there's no ability to cross-departmentally bill or reconcile that financial transaction. So the department that owns the printer is ultimately footing the bill to fulfill an order for another group, and that is limiting and problematic at times. And then just how that product is shipped and moved to the end user through the organization, all can be managed inside the platform. So we've also designed the platform to be accessible through a whole variety of levels of engagement. We understand that, there's some people out there that really deeply understand 3D print production and how to use the machines and how to design for them. But there's others that have no or limited 3D printing capabilities and are not necessarily interested in developing any. But what they do want is access to the products and the output, just not to be kind of involved in the process, and may not have the time or resources to participate in that manner. And we'll talk a little bit about how each of these are serviced inside the whole platform as we move forward here. There's an intermediate group that has some 3D printing activity. Maybe you're running some prints on site. Again, probably not a quality assurance or quality management profile or set of processes that are being used to manage risk. And if you do, again, it's probably limited in access from an organizational perspective. And then even on the people who are running advanced, what I'd say they're running maybe multi-machines, doing 3D print production on a regular basis, there's still typically limited resources and scalability of how those machines and how those services get accessed by others inside the organization. So based on this, we've developed they're all bundled inside of one platform, but really there's three different ways to access 3D printing inside of any organization from our assessment. One is that you want an outside group such as PolyUnity to fully manage your print production. You want to be able to send them ideas, have the design taken care of, the products approved, the products printed or manufactured, and you just want the end piece or the end part and have that shipped back to you. And so that's been the core platform that PolyUnity has kind of developed to begin with. What we've now done is taken all those workflows and those features inside of our platform, and we've opened it up to allow clients to manage their own 3D print production services inside their organization. So item one is you want to manage service. Two, you want to run and manage your own printers, but you want to do it in a more qualified manner, and you maybe make it more accessible. The third piece that we've heard from many groups is that, let me take a step back for a second. With option two, the difference is, or maybe the difference between option one and two is that for any products that PolyUnity designs and manufactures, we own the liability for. It's typically done, if required, under our MDL with Health Canada. We carry insurance, and so and it's done under our warranty program, and again, and our liability. If as a client, as a healthcare organization, you manage your own 3D print production service, you're owning the liability and the warranty, or for that actual product that's manufactured inside your organization. But what we've been asked to produce is a remote print service where you can still have a printer inside your facility, but that ultimately it allows access to our digital inventory, our 600 products that we've already created, and PolyUnity can print remotely to that machine so that you don't have to worry about shipping it. There's no kind of delays. The turnaround time is faster, but we as PolyUnity would still own the the liability and the warranty on that product, because we can control the material that's used, the print profile, and we can validate that product. So this is a under development feature now that we're getting hopefully really close on. And the other thing that we're developing that we've heard from is that for many organizations that they'd like to have a standardized certified 3D print training program. So we're working with a college to help to create a program to create a certified 3D print training program that technicians can have, and they'd have a standard of service so that we know from PolyUnity's perspective, when we print a product inside your organization, that the people who are managing that print service are qualified and capable of, running the machines and taking a print off and assessing that product to make sure that it meets a quality standard. When you have all those things, then we can still own the liability and the warranty on that product. So across many organizations, what we're seeing, it's you can run any one of these, but really at the end of the day, the trend that we're seeing is that it's all three of these services that are wanted and required to run a fully scalable 3D print operation inside your organization. So I'm sure there's probably lots of questions around that, and we'll get to them shortly. But we'll talk just briefly about, well, how do you go about acquiring these types of 3D print production services? And so we started off with a very easy pay-as-you-go type system. And this could be step one if you want. We've implemented features inside of our platform, so you can just get a regular purchase order, a process that you'd be familiar with inside your organization. You can come to our platform, request a product or service. We generate an estimate for you. You take that estimate, you can export the PDF, go back, get yourself a purchase order. It'll hold and freeze that product request, come back, attach the purchase order, and you can pay for it that way. And ultimately, this is a fully managed service. You don't need your own machines, you don't need your materials, you don't need technicians, you don't need software, any of those things. It's really good for an individual or small groups to kind of get out of the gate, get going, a single department, if you want to kind of test and determine if 3D printing is something that's of value to you. Again, pricing estimates are provided. You're not, there's no hidden costs. Ultimately, every time when you request a service, if the estimate comes back, if you agree with it, you say yes, and then the service will kind of commence. But before then, there's no costs that need to be incurred, no upfront payments. And it's a very low resource impact on the organization. We would provide some training, set you up with a user account, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second, but otherwise, there's no big overhead to accessing this service. And as an organization, you can actually stay inside the pay-as-you-go service and scale it, and you can have as many users as you want inside your organization operating and accessing the service in this manner. And there are advantages, as we'll talk about in a second, to kind of moving towards a more fully integrated platform. But this will get you access to product design services and print production services without having to, again, buy machines or materials or assign staff or any of those things, and have it all done in a qualified manner. The second one, which we've done with quite a few groups as well now, is, and this is an optional stage, but some groups want to kind of run a project to understand a little more deeply what the value prop is, how they may be able to work, what their users think of it, what problems they can solve inside their organization. So we do offer as well an evaluation project, and we can scope this to kind of meet your needs. Ultimately, it's a fairly short project, 1 to 3 months in duration, usually around 3 departments is a good number. Pick the groups that, it can be one department, but it can be a couple as well, depending on what, from an organizational perspective, you want to accomplish. You get product design, print production services. There'd be onboarding, training, and support for bringing users on. We find that having one of our technicians or client success managers to come out and spend typically a week on site, touring the facilities, understanding your operations a little more deeply, talking specifically about what problems you can solve with 3D printing is a very valuable exercise. We'd incorporate that into the project. You get reports back on KPIs, and we'll show you, some summaries of what those reports look like, again, a little bit at the end here. And we'd also take some time to integrate some of the software functionalities, such as billing integration, that streamlines the ordering process, approval processes inside your organization, so that you can request a product, have it designed, and make sure that it's approved in specifically for your organization, and so on. So that's kind of a package project, and ultimately that can take you from pay as you go, like what you see, run a more formal project over a period of a couple of months, do an assessment, understand the value, what that means for you, and then ultimately this can lead into a formal contract and agreement. Typically, the ways these are structured when we deal with procurement is that they end up being multi-year agreements. They provide access to a full suite of services. You don't necessarily need to take them all. You can pick the pieces that work for you, but it does provide a much more streamlined, much more streamlined access to the service, because you don't have to go get a PO for every product that you need. You can just digitally request it. Typically, there's an order approver that's associated with the product request or the new design request that gets signed off digitally inside the platform. And what we've shown is that cost compared to a PO process is 95% more efficient inside of our platform than it would be to actually go out and run that PO process every time. So there's cost savings and a efficiency in just how you access ordering services. And we would, at that point, the full order approval, the product approval, the billing integration processes would all be done. And there's an option to run on-site production or have on-site support as part of all of that. We work with the procurement teams inside your organization, we have templated agreements that support a variety of different procurement options by setting up a direct vendor agreement, something like a advanced contract award notice or a notice of intent, or if required, we go through a formal public procurement process such as an RFP as well. And from a feature perspective, here's what this looks like. From a pay-as-you-go perspective, you get 3D print production, you get access to the digital catalog, and you get design services, all of that provided as a managed service by PolyUnity. On a project basis, you get assigned a project manager. We'd work towards integrated billing and some customized reporting for your group. And then ultimately, the product approvals, on-site production, any of those things that you want would come with a more of an enterprise style agreement. And again, we've done this many times, so it would require an introduction to the procurement team and typically a sponsor, but it's not something, as a person inside your organization that you need to, I guess, understand deeply. PolyUnity can help to lead that engagement with your procurement team. So if we wind all this back, getting started, where do we go? How do we come out of the gate here? And I guess the easiest and first place, you can scan this QR code. There'll be another one coming up in a bit, but we usually just start off with having someone from our sales or customer success team to come in, have some meetings with your team, understand what you're looking to accomplish, where you want to get started. And, again, there's some very easy ways to kind of get you out of the gate, no cost, no hassle. We also host a series of team presentations that allow you to inform your whole department. We can run them on a departmental basis. We have presentations for your executive group. We do them, the art of the possible, what's happening inside of 3D printing, again, all the way down to very practical kind of user training and onboarding. And if you want to see a few sample products and understand what the material options are, we can provide those as well. And, the green boxes, even with a pay-as-you-go user, what we would do is make sure your organization is set up inside our platform, and we'd send out user account invitations. There's no limit to the number of users. We don't bill on a per user basis, so you can have as many people as you want on the platform, and then you only pay for the services that you consume. And then as we go forward, some of the more advanced training options that we'd incorporate into a larger scale onboarding. I'm going to quickly step through just a couple of case studies of 3 different groups that we've worked with, and just to show you how different organizations have approached kind of solving this problem. There's no right or wrong. There's just kind of what fits your organization, I guess, best. So the first one is Newfoundland Labrador Health Services. They were our first client. We've now worked with, rehabilitation, the rehab group over on the left. Tim Healy is the middle guy here. He's been a huge proponent of us in working directly with their radiation oncology cancer care group, and some executive sponsorship from Ron and Liam, and I'm sure people that you may be familiar with on the right side. So this project took place quite a while ago, but this will be kind of, I guess, an example of what happened when we ran a Can Health project with NLHS. Procurement cost savings, what they saved through the bolus service, the number of users that were onboarded. But we ran this was over a year-long project with NLHS, and those are some of the highlights. But ultimately, their engagement with 3D printing really kicked off in the pandemic, just because of some supply chain issues and other issues that they were having. That led into a Can Health project. Ultimately, there was a public RFP and a procurement that took place for a 5-year contract. With NLHS, though, they're not running their own printers. PolyUnity is managing. So the AMS is the additive manufacturing as a service. And by offsite, I mean, we're not actually located inside their physical facilities. So we run their whole managed service in outside, and we do all the design, production, and provide all the services associated with that outside of that. And that works. We're integrated with their shipping and internal supply network. We have drop points where we can put products. We can move products across the whole province, and we have users from all regions across the province who are, onboarded and trained and utilizing the platform. Geo has a different setup, and our engagement with Geo really was solidified with the clinical engineering team. We've been working with them for many years now. I have a great working relationship, and I think it's been lots of value in both directions. So we ran a project with them with OBIO, which is the Ontario Bioscience Innovation Organization. Again, you can see some of the results from that project. We ran a 6-month project. Oops, sorry, one additional slide here. A part of what I thought was interesting in capturing is just the user experience of having a 3D print production system, in this case on site in their hospital, and what that meant to them. And across the board, what we've seen is that all frontline users and technicians that we were working with really saw a lot of value in having a 3D print production system accessible to them. So they started out by running an internal innovation hub with clinical engineering. We then established a formal management hub. They had a printer or two that we took under our management and ran on their behalf. We ran the OBIO project that led to a procurement. And now we continue to run a on-site print production hub, but we fully manage all the design and print production services for Geo. Horizon, oops, sorry, skipped ahead one. Horizon came to us because they actually had 3D print production system in their image enhancement center. The problem was, as we've already talked about, it was kind of siloed inside of one hospital, not accessible to the whole organization. And then Rachel Bernier and all the team over at the Stan Cassidy Center are also running some 3D print production services inside their organization, and ultimately really trying to make it accessible kind of organization wide. We ran a Can Health project with them over the last while, and ultimately where we're at on their roadmap is, again, the initial engagement came from the Image Enhancement Center. We ran a Can Health project. We're now in the process of they're just going to do an announcement on the basically an ACAN, an advanced contract award notification, and moving toward a 5-year project. With Horizon, though, they have a different set of needs, and one of them is that in addition to PolyUnity providing print production and design services that complements what they're doing, they also have internally managed 3D print production. And then as we move forward and we're having these conversations actively, there's a potential, depending on scale, that PolyUnity would provide staffing or resourcing to help run an internal production hub and the ability to do remote 3D print production services at their organization. So I'm going to open it up to questions just to make sure we got time to answer all of them. But really, if you're looking to get going here, you can scan the QR code with your phone, set up a meeting. This will take you right to Jason's calendar. Handsome young man there. We'll be more than happy to take care of you. And yeah, at this point, I'd like to open it up and take some questions if there are any. You can put them in the chat or raise your hand. And
Yeah, there was some question, but they were answered by Jason. Do you want us to revise them or?
If they've all been answered and everyone has access to them.
Yeah.
But if not, I'm more than happy to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Yeah, we might. I can ask a question. What are some of the considerations we should look at from healthcare and regulation perspective from 3D printing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Not all of the regulation, like Health Canada is following somewhat, I think, you know, there's a standard set of medical device regulations that are established by Health Canada, but there's not necessarily a set of regulations around 3D printing itself. So from PolyUnity's perspective, we hold an MDEL we have for the last 5 years with Health Canada, which allows us to manufacture class 1 and unclassified medical devices and ensure that we get audited on an annual basis from that perspective. We also engage with them depending on the request. If we want to make sure that what we're doing is kind of compliant with their processes, because again, there's not a specific set of regulations pertaining to 3D printing. There is guidance that's been released as of May of this past year, and from the FDA, which from a clinical engineering perspective does a really good job of, I would say, providing classification and guidance around what's service and repair as compared to remanufacturing, which are two completely different risk profiles. And so we also, from PolyUnity's perspective, we follow that guidance to understand what we think is standard service and repair, or if you're changing the risk profile on a device, and and that will be more again into the remanufacturing.
Thank you. There's another question from Esteban Riviera. Are there any infection control Health Canada concerns when fixing medical equipment using 3D printed parts?
Not that we are aware of. And what we do is we engage IPAC in pretty much every product that we create. So, and we use a standard set of materials that have passed IPAC approval for sanitation. And in some cases, depending on the nature of the material, you can get materials that are sterilizable too as well, that can be used in an autoclave. But ultimately, all of the products that we produce can be sanitized with standard means of kind of cleaning products. There are also materials, especially resin-based materials, that can be used that are biocompatible. And we're now working with a third-party firm in launching a project that we're pretty excited about. It's a antimicrobial filament that basically the material itself will have antimicrobial properties to help the efficacy in preventing germs inside of the or spread of germs inside of a healthcare organization.
All right. Thank you, Mark and Jason. And now we are at 1 o'clock mark. We're going to respect people's time. So if there's no further questions or comments, we will conclude today's webinar by thanking our panel of experts and all our participants for joining us today. Please complete the feedback survey when you receive it. Hope to hear from you at the next CMBES webinar. And goodbye for now, and thanks everyone for participating. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.